Welcome to the second installment of Echoes of the Arena. Today we're going to discuss the Mogilny affair. So to set the stage, we'll start the year's 1989. The Olympics have just finished in Calgary a year prior. Is that accurate? That would
Yes,
be 88, right?
yes.
The Soviet Union's Red Army team is in Stockholm for the World Championships with a lot of talent on board. And that's where the story starts. Dad, I'll
Thank
lay it off
you.
to you.
Thank you. Yes, this plays like a James Bond thriller. The Alexander Mogilny was on that 1988 Olympic team, um, but moving on to what you just mentioned in 1989, when he played actually in two tournaments that year. He played in I believe it was the junior championships in Anchorage, Alaska, which the Soviet Army won.
I
And
think
then
they
he
crushed
played,
everybody that year.
they did, they did. And then they were, like you said, they were at the Worlds, which was in Stockholm, which they had just won. And this is where the story begins. Just to backtrack a little bit on a few interesting footnotes.
Let's talk about where the Soviet Union is at this time, or maybe where they're coming from a little bit. And then I know that you want to talk about how Soviet hockey program.
Yes, Cold War is still in high gear. There's still um, lots of friction between the West, mainly the United States. George Bush is our president.
Now you would know better than I would because I was only 6 when this happened, but
Right, right.
do we know that the wall is falling imminently at this time?
The wall is close to falling. The wall has not fallen yet, but time is
Do we know that it's
being.
going to be falling soon?
Uh, let's just say there's, to use a metaphor, there's cracks in the wall, meaning the
Okay.
Soviet Union, the communist regime is definitely struggling.
And there's credible
And
evidence, I assume, from the international community that this is going to happen, not if, but when.
yes, exactly,
Okay.
exactly. So just to backtrack what you wanted me to talk about, the Soviet hockey program and its beginnings. A gentleman by the name of Vladimir Tarasov is considered the father of Russian hockey. He is a player's coach, which was kind of an oddity in the Soviet Union in those days, since the Soviet Union was still very rigid, as seen through his successor, who was Viktor Tikhonov, who you might remember him. A lot of people might remember him from the 1980 Olympics and uh, the U.S. upset of the Soviet team. But Tarasov, his way of coaching the game was kind of on the cutting edge for the time in sports history. He believed in, instead of the North American hockey, which was a lot of rushing the puck, he believed in just passing the puck, short, crisp, tape to tape passes.
Uh, which which um which one is this?
Tarasov.
Tarasov. Now
This
this
is
is
Tarasov.
I think you mean Anatoly Tarasov.
Was it Anatoly?
Yes, because I
Okay.
just looked up the
Oh,
Tarasov and
okay. Okay.
he's the one this guy's quite an interesting looking guy. Looks like he's
Yes.
had more than a few drinks.
Yes, he has.
But
Most likely a lot of vodka.
yeah, just anyone's curious what he looks like. Hold on. Holy crap. Look at this freaking guy.
He looked a
There
little
he is.
yes, he's definitely had a few late nights
A couple pops,
on the
but
road.
knew a lot about hockey.
Knew a lot about hockey. A very good coach. Published a few books on coaching, which even North American coaches uh, uh, they had adapted some of the his methods. One coach, which I know in particular, who really employed his methods, was Frank Sherrow, who was the coach of the Flyers
Is he related to
during the
Ray
ball.
Shero?
They, I think they are related, yes.
That's interesting.
And he was the coach during the Broad Street Bully days with those great teams of the
So
early
was he really coaching,
70s.
or was he just wrangling a bunch of goons who could sometimes play hockey if they wanted to?
Yeah, they obviously were playing the North American style of, let's intimidate the opposition.
Which doesn't always
Um,
work when you
doesn't always work. As we can see today, it's the
totally evolved.
game has totally evolved to much.
You can't afford to have guys like they had back then on the ice, guys who could barely skate but were just tough guys. You can't afford to
Exactly,
do that anymore.
exactly. When you think of the Tarasov method, and then you think of what's going on in the league today,
Mhm.
he was way ahead of his time. Because basically what the Russians were doing in the 70s and 80s, we're doing now. More of a wide open game, lots of skating, and they and the passing was just as
Mhm.
I say, tape to tape, get players out of position, get down low, and get
Create
mismatches.
create mismatches.
Yeah, and that's all the
Is
Soviets
that
did, create
is
mismatches.
but it's not cycling like we think of cycling, like grinding
Yeah,
cycling.
yeah.
It's more of a high tempo, high skill cycling
Hmm.
where you
Exactly.
are you're cycling, but it's constant
Right.
rotation. Guys are
Yes.
always moving, not, the the grinding of the mid 90s, early 90s where you're just kind of kicking the puck along the boards. It's not that. So
Right. Right.
don't picture that if you're thinking of that
Right.
kind of
Yeah. No, it's not that. It's not that.
picture
It's
a
just
much more fluid version of that.
and I tell you where Freddie Sharrow got the idea, if you remember correctly, and they still do it to this day, actually, in North American hockey. I haven't watched a lot of European hockey as much as I need to, but watching the North American game, let's take, for example, the power play. Okay. Power
Mhm.
play. How many times have we seen the players take the puck behind the net, set up the breakout, and then go? You watch the Russians of the 70s and 80s, they didn't do that. Tarasov felt that it was a waste of time. You're wasting seconds on your power play. So you get the puck and you go. And I know Shero that was one thing he pointed out in an interview I saw of him during that time period that he said he employed that
He's
because,
right about that. That is, I think, a place, and I've not even thought of this until you're mentioning it now, but if we think about, the league by and large, the margins are so fine, the margin for error is so little, the talent from top to bottom is there's probably not much of a gap there. So where can you find the advantages? I
mhm,
don't know, not dicking around on your own power play in your own end,
right,
waiting for the guy
exactly,
to skate behind the net to see if he picks it up or the defenseman skates it out.
exactly,
Utilize
exactly.
that time. Think about how much time over the course of a season, just a regular season, is wasted on the power play by
Well, exactly.
the stuff like that, the line changing that could be much more fluid. I mean, we just
Hmm.
see shitty examples of it because we're Sabres fans.
Yeah, exactly. But what you were saying there, I'm just thinking at it. I'm just thinking of the fact that okay, so you set the puck up behind the net,
Mhm.
and then you give the PK time to set up themselves. Whereas if you get the
The
puck
whole thing
and
should
just
be one.
go,
Exactly.
it's
You're creating
it puts everybody
transition.
off balance.
You're creating transition
Hmm.
opportunities, which is what the defense doesn't like that. They're
Right,
disorganized.
exactly. So that they obviously changed the game. They
Mhm.
were very successful. Um, Mogilny, for example, that line that he was on
I was going to say
as
the line that won the juniors that year.
yes,
That's Fedorov, Mogilny, and Bure.
Bure, yes, yes. So
None of these guys at the time are in the NHL.
nope,
They don't have a
nope,
path to the NHL right now.
nope, nope,
And why is that?
nope. Well, basically, you know, getting a little bit into the McGillney situation. Okay, so Mogilny was in 1988, but was drafted by the Sabres
In the fifth round.
in the fifth round. The the consensus was stupid thing to do. He's never going to see North America. You're never going to see him. Yes, he might arguably be the best player in the world right now, but you're not going to see him. So why waste a draft choice
It
on,
didn't
you know,
seem like who was the first pick overall that year?
well, that I don't know. I don't know.
That it
But
was somebody of note, I think.
but but in talking and remembering a conversation between me and Don Luce, who was then the director of scouting for the Sabres,
Hmm.
he felt that McGillney was the best player in the draft. But
Yes.
the odds of him being seen in North America were slim to none. Uh,
So they had to really take that into consideration.
yeah. Lucy saw him in Alaska at the juniors, introduced himself, basically gave him a business card and said, if you ever have any questions about our organization, if things change regarding the political climate, feel free to give me a call. Think
Can
nothing
I
of it?
can I just tell you the top
Yeah.
10 picks that year?
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. That'd be
Because
interesting.
there there's some real talent in here.
So this was
Um,
88 now, right?
this is 88. So this would have been
Okay.
the year, yes, as you stated, um, he was believed to be the best player
Hmm.
by a long shot. So he was the 89th pick overall. And that was us. I'm sorry, not us. The Sabres making that pick. And it's actually from a trade from the Rangers.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. It is the Rangers pick went to Buffalo as a result of a trade on December 31st that sent Paul Sear and a 10th round
Oh,
pick in the 88 draft to the Rangers in exchange for Mike Donnelly and this pick.
wow.
Yeah. Um, so the top 10, Mike Modano, first overall.
Okay. Okay.
Just for the record, we have,
Hall of Famer, by the way.
yes, we have three Hall of Famers in this group, and we have two All-Stars that are not in the Hall of Fame, I think. This entire draft has five Hall of Famers, though.
Okay. Okay.
It's funny, the other two Hall of Famers are picked in the fourth round within four picks of another, and they sandwich another player who you will recognize as also an NHL All-Star. So it was Mike Modano, first pick overall to the North Stars. Second pick was Trevor Linden.
Hmm.
Third pick, Curtis Lecision. Remember, he played with the Nordiques.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Fourth pick overall was Darren Shannon, who did have
Oh,
a cup of
wow. Yeah.
coffee with the
Yeah.
Sabres
The
at one point.
Sabres. Yep.
Five, I've never heard of Daniel Dorr.
Never heard of
Played for
him.
the Nordiques, came from the Q.
Okay.
Scott Pearson was the sixth pick overall.
Ah, Scott Pearson. Scott
Yes,
Pearson. A little sidebar. Can I do a little sidebar
you
with
may.
Scott Pearson? So Scott Pearson played with both the Sabres and the Leafs.
He was drafted here by the Leafs.
Scott Pearson is coaching hockey in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh shit.
And Scott Pearson coached Connor Moore, who is a former student of mine,
Who played
who
at
went
BC?
on to play at BC and then is currently playing in the ECHL with the Charleston team,
Interesting.
or South Carolina Stingrays, actually, who play in Charleston.
Hmm.
Scott coached Connor. Scott also has a son, and I do not remember his first name, but he went to the University of Maine. Both those boys played together for the Atlanta Fire. So just a little, side note where Scott Pearson is in this day and age. Did not know he was in that draft
Haven't said
and
Scott
ran
Pearson's
rather
name.
high.
He was a top 10 pick. Yeah.
Where did he play his junior hockey?
Kingston.
Okay.
Kingston Canadians.
Okay.
Seventh pick, Martin Jelena.
Okay. Yeah.
Eighth pick, Hockey Hall of Famer Jeremy Roenick.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Ninth
Still around.
pick, don't believe he's a Hockey Hall of Famer, although maybe he should be at some point. Rod Brindamore.
He will probably get in as a player, maybe a coach, I don't know, but certainly
But
I think he deserves the Hall of Fame.
part of the reason we're doing this episode is Alexander Mogilny is not in the Hall of Fame, and he should certainly get
Yes,
in
which
before Rod Brindamore does.
we're definitely going to approach that subject soon
And
because
then to round out the top 10, this is actually interesting because they ended up scoring 76 goals in the same season then. Timu Solani was the 10th guy
Mm,
overall.
okay. So you can easily compare Timo with McGillney.
Yeah, I think if you look at this, hold on, let me go back, let me go down to the fourth round and just go through these
Okay,
couple picks here
okay,
because um it's interesting because Roenick and the 67th pick is Hockey Hall of Famer Mark Recchi.
okay,
The 68th pick is former All-Star Tony Amante,
okay,
who played also at Thayer Academy with Jeremy Roenick.
okay. Yeah,
So that must have been
yeah, quite
quite
the
the
team.
team there. And then the 70th pick overall is Hockey Hall of Famer Rob Blake. Played at
Oh, okay.
Bowling
Yeah.
Green.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So there you go.
So I think if we look at the talent from the draft, maybe he is not after looking back, maybe he's not by far the best player. If you
Right.
like, Solani is probably the most prolific goal scorer in this draft, even if
Right.
you include McGillney, just because the amount of 50 goal seasons he had,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, or at least 40 goal seasons if I pull up his stats. But anyway, let's get on to
The intrigue.
the intrigue and the
Oh, the
fun.
intrigue. Okay. So, like I stated earlier, the, the the Red Army team has just won the gold medal at the World Championships in Stockholm, Sweden.
Hmm.
Don Luce gets a phone call in Buffalo from a representative of Alexander Mogilny's. From my research, it is the wife of his Russian agent,
Interesting.
requesting or letting the Sabres know that Alexander wants to come to North America. Short time later, I don't know, within hours, I guess, according to what I've come across, Don Luce and Jerry Meehan, who was the former captain of the Sabres, now in '89 he was the general manager, also an attorney, which kind of plays an important part here. They're on an airplane heading to Stockholm. Land in Stockholm, contact McGillney's group, set up a meeting later that night at their hotel in Stockholm. Unbeknownst to Jerry Meehan and Don Luce, Alexander Mogilny and his entourage show up unannounced earlier in the afternoon at the hotel, saying that there is a meeting, a team meeting that later that evening, so they would have to do something now. So so some discussion takes place. McGillney leaves. I'm just kind of editing things here, so I don't want to
Hmm.
drone on with some of the minor facts. McGillney leaves. Now the everything is kind of set in motion to get McGillney to the States. During their short impromptu meeting, Jerry Meehan said, I wouldn't have it, I don't, we'd love to have you in Buffalo, but I don't have an issue if you want to back out. This is obviously a life-changing event.
Hmm.
And it's also,
Obviously, there would be repercussions for
there would
possibly
be
repercussions for family members of his that were still
ex
in the Union.
exactly. So there's concerns there. He is also, you have to remember, he is a member of the Red Army. So if he defects
He's a desertion
in the
and
eyes of the
could be
Russian,
treasonous.
exactly. So exactly. So a lot going on.
Hmm.
But Alexander insisted that this is what he wants to do. That he just felt that after his days of playing hockey are
Hmm.
over, there's nothing for him in the Soviet Union. So, um,
This will be a good time for us to take a
okay,
quick,
quick break.
quick non-commercial break, and to come back with the culmination of the Mogilny defection story and some discussion on why the hell is this guy not in the Hockey Hall of Fame?
Sounds good.
Mm,
Yes.
We'll be back.
Okay.
And we're back.
Okay, I think left to take our commercial break or non-commercial break,
Break. Yeah.
we were talking about the fact that McGillney had met with the Sabre brass,
Hmm.
namely Don Luce and Jerry Meehan, in their hotel in Stockholm. The wheels now are beginning to move forward. There was a gentleman who was actually a neighbor of Craig Ramsey, Craig was our assistant general manager in '89. And this gentleman was the head of the local immigration and naturalization office of Western New York, based in Buffalo. And he got involved regarding the defection of a Soviet citizen, hockey player, uh, hoping to come to Buffalo.
And that got
So
to the president.
yes, so eventually he got worked its way all the way up to George Bush,
And that's
the
not the
first George
president of the
Bush.
Sabres. That's the president of the United States.
Well, the President of the United States, but also,
Yes.
yes, the President of the Sabres and owner at the time, Seymour Knox III, was very excited that this was happening and was obviously going to play a major role once McGillney got out of Russia. So we're in Stockholm.
Hmm.
The wheels are turning. The next day, they were supposed to meet McGillney at a local mall. And then from there, they were going to go to another hotel because now they got and rightly so, they got the impression that people are going to be looking for
For
McGillney
him.
because he is AWOL.
Notably,
And
probably the KGB.
yeah, exactly, those three letters. So as they were approaching the mall,
Mm.
um, Joey Meehan and Luce, McGillney and his entourage burst out of the doors, and they're hightailing it. So they're concerned that someone is following them. They get in the car, they take off. They drop Jerry Meehan off at the U.S. consulate in Stockholm.
Jeez.
Luce was instructed by Meehan to just drive around Stockholm. Do not stop
With
anywhere.
him,
With McGillney and his I believe it was
agent.
his agent might have been there
Or,
now.
yeah.
So Don Lewis was talking about driving around a strange city they really didn't know just to, evade the possible KGB uh, capture or encounter.
Now, I had
So
read that they had to be switching hotels
yes, they were switching hotels pretty much constantly.
regularly.
Um, the paperwork was done at the consulate.
Hmm.
He got his exit visa letter, whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
To fast forward, um, as they like you said, they did switch hotels a couple times, at least a couple times. Uh, Next morning, headed to the airport, got through the airport okay, got into the gate area, saw newspapers that they had already had all over the Stockholm media that McGillney was missing. He was being searched for by hockey officials. I'm sure
Jeez.
the KGB, even the Stockholm police were involved in trying to find him. I don't think they worked hard on finding him because I
No,
think
me
they
neither.
probably could have figured it out, and I tell you why in a little while. And so anyway, they get on the plane. Plane takes off. They can all exhale. They get to New York, JFK Airport. As they enter the airport, Jerry Meehan is pulled over by the director of the airport saying, "You got to go down and talk to these reporters. There are, at the time, the most reporters ever congregated at JFK are down and they have questions. They heard about the
Ever.
defection. Yes, ever.
That's insane.
They heard about the defection. They want to know, you know,
Yeah.
what the story is. Just to backtrack, which
So
I think,
Jerry Meehan walks down there funny because he's got 3 dozen reporters up his
yeah,
ass.
exactly. And then he just basically tells them, I have no comment. You know, I have McGillney. McGillney is with us. I have no comment. I know one reporter asked him, are you going into the city? I have no comment. Um,
That would be dangerous to say
oh, I
what they're
know.
doing.
But just to backtrack, as they were uh, reading newspapers in Stockholm in the airport,
Hmm.
the newspapers had already published the hotels that they were at. So the
Jeez.
information was out there. So that's why I'm saying I don't think the
They
Stockholm
probably
police
knew where
worked
he
too
was.
hard on
Yeah.
locating McGillney. But I'm surprised the KGB wasn't a little more maybe active. Good thing they weren't, because I think not only was McGillney in danger, so were Jerry Meehan and Don Luce. I
Yeah.
mean, this was big. This was a big deal.
They wouldn't have hesitated to.
No, they probably
They're
wouldn't.
not government officials.
And
They're
the
citizens.
again the punishment for McGillney would have been 7 years of hard labor for
Yeah,
desertion.
possibly if he was lucky.
Yes, if he was lucky. So that same evening, they end up in New York, in Buffalo, and I remember it myself because they had a live. They cut into all the TV shows, and
Hmm.
they ABC or WKBW, Channel 4, Channel 2 were both. They were all there to at the the presser and got to meet Alexander Mogilny, and so that was the. But that wasn't the end of the story, because even though he was out of Russia, he still had to
He still had to
apply
be
for,
careful. Yeah,
or well, he had to be careful. He had to apply for political asylum.
right.
This is where Seymour Knox got involved. Seymour Knox called his college buddy, the
AKA the president,
President George H.W. Bush,
Herschel.
who was very helpful in getting the right people involved. And McGillney did get his political asylum. Initially he lived with Don Luce and his family. They thought that would be the best. Because, again, this guy was, I think, 20. He was a young man.
Really, and had never had anything before. So
No, no.
think of as
So
a matured probably by the experiences that he had to deal with, but
I'm sure
immature insofar as having, all these things available to him. And
well, plus he did not have the grasp of the English language as yet. So he could barely speak the language. So
yeah,
that was difficult. So, but it was an interesting time. It was, I think, a watershed moment for the NHL. He was the first National Hockey League player, soon to be player, that
mhm.
defected from the Soviet Union. So important time in American history, and
And NHL history.
became a
Change the
very good
league,
player.
change the league.
Changed the league. I want to ask you something before you get into the. I know we're going to talk about his. Uh, I think his rightful place is in the Hall of Fame, but
I
obviously
have,
there's some issues.
I have two
Okay.
arguments for that, but go ahead and what were you going to ask
No,
me?
I was just going to say there was a film clip that you saw
Uh-huh.
from the video that set the argument for the fact that he should be in the Hall of Fame.
The TSN video.
TSN video where he just
Mhm.
had a burst of speed coming
And
up the ice.
for those listening, we can post a link to that video.
And then,
It's pro McGillney, and but I think rightfully so. Y-
well,
I,
I was going to say, as soon as I saw that video, now I know the players might not have been up to what they are today, but does that remind you of even someone like Connor McDavid as far as the
yes.
speed that he has or had?
Um, he didn't he didn't put it in gear as much,
Yeah,
but
right.
there are some clips from there that I immediately knew where you were going with it because you could tell that Like there was a couple where he's just gliding.
Hmm.
He's just gliding faster than everyone and taking on the defenders as opposed to trying to go, you know, he kind of tries to go through them
Right.
with talent
Right.
and stick handling, and he can go around them. Um, it was just, yeah, I remember quite a bit of him. I
And I'm curious.
remember the 76 goal season. I do have
Yeah.
some memories of that. I also have memories of watching him in the playoffs when I was in college.
Yeah.
So his
Well,
career.
well, we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about his Hall of Fame resume. But like, I'm just curious. I don't know if you have the answer, but I'm curious.
Well, I have all the answers.
That 92, 93 season.
Mhm.
What was it, 92, 93, or was
No,
that
it
the
was
season?
92, 93 was the
Okay.
76 goal season.
What was the goal production from that line? Because
Goal production from that line.
we're
Let's,
talking
let's
LaFontaine,
Andrew
McGillney,
Chuck.
Dave Andreychuk. I think you said yesterday that um, Petty LaFontaine was over 50, right?
He had over 50 goals that year, I think. I'm going to pull
So
it up right now.
McGillney 76, and Andreychuk, I would say, was well over 20
It had to be
because of the
just
way he
from
used to
sitting in
score.
front.
Well, he sat in the
Uh,
front of the net and deflected pucks.
yeah,
But
but
that
like
takes
I'm
the skill
thinking
too.
like he he was also doing it while there was like two great players around him, so he was just
Oh
picking
yeah.
up the garbage.
But
All right, I'm gonna
I
put
would be curious because that had to be one of the higher producing lines in the history of the league
NHL,
for one
NHL.
season.
Yeah, I'm pulling it up now. Okay. So 92, 93. Mogilny played 77 games, had 76 goals. This would be his fourth season in the league. So he's already
Okay.
scored 30. Just set the stage. His rookie season, he had 43 points in 65 games. His second season, he was already averaging a point a game. He
Okay.
had 64 points in 62 games and reached the 30 goal mark.
Okay.
In his third season, he had 39 goals and 84 points. And then 92 was his peak of goal scoring in the NHL. He had 76 goals,
Yeah.
51 assists, and 127 points. Unfortunately, that only made him +7 for the year.
Hmm.
So they
Yeah.
maybe weren't the best defensive line either, but they also probably played a ton of um, power play time.
Yeah.
So he had 127 points. Pat LaFontaine that year had 148. He had 53 goals, 95 assists.
Okay. Okay.
And Andrew Chuck, yeah, he had 29 goals.
Okay.
He only
Okay.
had 61 points. He played 52 games that year, and then he got
Okay.
traded to
Well,
the
we'll
Leafs.
trade it. Okay. So he was only there half a year, basically,
Yep.
or a little over half the year.
And he scored half a year's worth of points on a good season. He was over a point a game. He had 61 points when he
Okay.
got traded after 52 games.
Okay.
Then I
I
want to
be
say, didn't Yuri Himalev end up on his line at some point?
yeah, I believe he did. Yes, I remember him a little. Yes,
And then Howard Chuck too.
Howard Chuck. Yeah, because was he with the Sabres then, or did he come
I'm not
around
sure.
that
Let me
time
see.
for the
He
trade
was
for
with the
what was it?
Sabres then.
Okay.
In 92, he played 81 games with the Sabres, had 96 points.
And I
He
might be
was,
wrong, but I think in that information that I had you look at regarding the numbers, didn't McGillney basically career average out as a goal a game? Or I'm sorry, a point a game?
point a game, yeah. Point a game.
Okay. Okay.
Here's the thing is it's a point a game over the course of almost 1,000 games.
Okay. Okay.
So he had over 1,000 points and in
Yes.
990 games.
Right.
I'm sure he could have gotten to 1,000 games if he really wanted to.
Right.
Um, two things. So when he reached 1,000 points, he was, I want to say, the 68th player or somewhere in the high 60s to do that in the history of the NHL.
Okay.
Um, a lot of the things that I had looked up regarding his statistics called him, well, he was like he's a triple crown winner because he'd won the Olympic gold, the Stanley Cup with the
Right.
Devils,
Right.
and a world championship.
Right.
He's actually a quadruple because he won the World Juniors too.
Right. Right.
So he's one of only four players, I think, to do that.
Okay.
The other three are in the Hall of Fame.
Okay.
I think one of them might even be two of the three are like huge upper echelon
Okay.
players in the game.
Okay.
So if you look at his statistically speaking, he'd average a point a game over about 1,000 games. He had a 76 goal season, several 30 goal seasons, multiple 40 goal seasons. I mean, uh, I don't know. I don't know how you don't have this guy in the Hall of Fame. The reason he retired was because of a degenerative hip condition that he had.
Right. Right.
But 990 games, he had 1,032 points. He's averaging about a goal every other game.
Okay.
I think,
And
and Lady Bing winner.
okay.
Um, oh, here's a list from NHL.com. World Junior A All-Star team in 1988. Best forward
Okay.
at World Juniors that year, 88. NHL
Okay.
second All-Star team, 1993 and 96. Played
Okay.
in the NHL All-Star game in 92, 93, 94, 96. And then was part of the trade that netted us back Mike Pekka
Right.
and
Exactly.
a draft pick, which would turn into Jamie Key.
Okay. Okay.
And then was traded to the Devils for Brendan Morrison and Dennis Peterson,
Okay.
and then signed as a free agent by Toronto.
Okay.
And then tried to go back to New Jersey, but only lasted part of a season before
Okay.
he hung him up. The hip issue was something that he was dealing with it for quite some time too.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's some fortunate. Unfortunately, it's probably pretty common with NHL players
and he broke his leg
as they get older.
twice
Oh,
during the
did he? Okay.
playoffs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also, to bring in another fact that not that maybe it's a prerequisite to well, it's not a prerequisite to go to the Hall of Fame, but
Well, hold
he
on.
also won this. Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead? No, no, no. I think you have a hockey point to make.
Yeah, he also won a Stanley Cup. So, no,
Not a prerequisite. A good topper to the end of a
right.
pretty great career, in my
Oh yeah.
opinion.
Oh yeah.
But the Hall of Fame, I'm going to pull up the Hall of Fame's website,
Okay.
and I want to see what the reasoning is for the Hall of Fame existing, because I think the fact that he is not in it flies in the face of what they're trying to do with the game.
Right. Right.
If you're talking about, the Hockey Hall of Fame, this guy is a groundbreaking player who changed the game and did so while also risking his own life. Why is he not in the Hall of Fame?
I know. I know.
You can't really make a great
I,
argument,
I would
I
like
think,
to, and again, I would be curious to compare his numbers
to guys already in.
With Fedorov's number, who's already in, and he's a Russian. Because
Uh,
if you use the Russian argument, maybe um, is Burry in the Hall of Fame?
if he's got to be in the Hall of Fame. Fedorov, though, it's not apples to oranges, but Fedorov, I believe, won the Selke for best defensive forward
Okay,
also.
yeah, right,
So that is a layer there that maybe
right,
that Mogilny didn't have, but to my opinion, it doesn't matter. Yeah, Bure was elected in 2012.
okay. So 2/3 of that line that played for the Red Army team is in the Hall of Fame. So why is it McGillney? That's
Uh,
interesting. It's interesting.
Fedorov was nominated in 2015.
Because I remember hearing his. I purposely listened to his acceptance speech because I knew he was your favorite player. And I remember your number 91
Well, it
jersey.
was just
He
he was a lot cooler than everyone else at the time.
was a cool guy.
He
And
wore white skates and white
yeah, he
gloves
wore
and
white skates. Yeah, yeah,
was not afraid to draw attention to himself,
right.
so he could back it up for the most part. He was on a great team though, also. Um, trying to think of where else I wanted to
But I
go
don't know
with
about those
him.
other
Go ahead.
players that came up with or came over with Fedorov, which would have been Larionov. Um, Obviously Konstantinov is the one that was in the accident. Was it
Yes,
Konstantinov?
yes, he was paralyzed
I
in
forget
that
the
accident.
other, Fetisov
Kozlov,
and Kozlov,
Slava
yeah,
Kozlov.
Slava Kozlov, yeah. So it's interesting because it seems like, it doesn't seem like there's any type of a issue to keep out the Russian players,
It certainly doesn't.
but then
Um,
but then how did McGillney fall through the cracks is interesting.
I had heard and or not heard. I had read in some of my reading that part of the one of the reasons that he's not in is the Hall of Fame thinks he doesn't care about it. Whether he cares
Could
about it or
be.
not, he should still be in it.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. It's a pantheon of greatness. The person,
Hmm.
if they choose not to show up, that's really on them. But why would you want the history of the game to not remember the memory
Well,
of the
and you
first
should,
Soviet
yeah.
player to make that jump?
That's
Seems kind of silly to me to not want that.
it's almost more that also basically supports the argument and why he should be in it because of what the lengths he went to.
Yes.
Like you said, he risked his life really because you know the KGB plays hardball. They don't give a shit.
Hmm.
They yeah, they would want him back to play hockey maybe, but even if he came back, it would have been, even if he came back under, sort of an agreement, it would be rough. Although ironically, he's back there now, and he's a president of a KHL team. But um, but I just think the extent in which he went to play the game in North America and the numbers that he put up while he played, he should be in
Hmm.
the Hall of Fame. I just don't see any argument that says otherwise.
There was also that stat about being able to uh being able to compare players across
Hmm.
different um
Right. Right.
and across different eras, and he made it based on that.
Exactly.
His
Exactly.
score for that was higher than Pat LaFontaine's actually, and LaFontaine's in the Hall of Fame.
And we talked about this last week too. I know it's tough sometimes to compare, like you said, between eras because you got like we were talking about the difference when you're comparing goal scorers, comparing Gretzky with Ovechkin is apples to oranges
Hmm.
because the game nowadays is just so much different. Much better goaltending. You know, everyone's fast,
Yep.
everyone's strong. Um, so I would, I would give more weight to Ovechkin as far as a goal scorer than I would to Gretzky.
Oh, not even close.
Yeah,
Not even close, especially now that he's passed him.
and still going. It's still going. He intends to play next season, I believe.
Mm. Yeah, I
So
think so.
he's gonna have another season's worth of goals. So he could be way past him.
Hmm. I'm just looking at a couple of things on like what are comparisons, good comparisons for him.
Hmm.
Really good comparisons, Paul Correa, who is in the Hockey Hall of Fame now.
Okay. Okay. Right. Right.
Both, so I'm looking at a website. I don't know what these numbers look accurate though as far as the his points are concerned, and I know the PPS score is correct because I saw that in a couple other places. But his PPS score is 274, which is that's the one that goes across different eras. But Paul Correa, he and Paul Correa, similar, very similar. Both
Right.
played 12 and a half adjusted seasons. had dominant peaks, battled serious injuries, played with superstars at their best. Um,
Right.
and their score, as far as across eras, is almost identical. Mogilny is 274, Korea is 276, and Korea's in the hall, and Mogilny's not in the hall.
Mhm.
I don't
Yeah.
know. It's interesting that that PPS score, um, the players around him, there's players around him
Hmm.
that are in
Hmm.
the hall. Like Ronick has a lower score than him. He's in.
Right. Right.
Did Zetterberg get in?
I do not believe he did. I think he might get in at some point, but I don't believe he got in yet. I don't recall that name.
He has not been inducted.
Okay.
He's also a member of the Triple Gold Club, Stanley Cup, Olympic gold, World Championship gold.
Okay.
Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if Zetterberg gets in before McGillney does, though, because I
Yeah. Yeah.
like you said, I think there's some kind of I don't know, some kind of stupid
Hmm.
thing going on with him. I guess I don't know. It just seems like he should be in there, purely based on the historical context that he brings to the game. But then when you add to it the prolific nature which he played the game for pretty large parts of his career.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
No, and
And he
doing
was
it.
able to do it. Here's one other thing. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. He was
Yeah.
able to
That's
do
right.
it in an era as the game evolved. You know, from that
Hmm.
Gretzky era of a lot of stand-up goaltenders where
Right.
he
Right.
was able to put up 76 goals, but he also had a 40 goal season much later in his career
Right. Right.
when the goaltending was considerably better, in my opinion.
Right. Right. Yeah, I was the one doing the research for this episode. I was not aware he was so dominant as a junior player.
Did not
I
know that
was
either.
he was just like again, I would say as a junior player, he would have been compared to like the Connor McDavid when Connor McDavid was a junior. I mean, he was just heads and shoulders above everyone else. So
Well, the reasoning
I
for that
was
is, we've got social media, so we knew about Connor
yeah.
McDavid before
Oh yeah,
Connor
yeah.
McDavid. We knew about Connor McDavid when he was what? When he got permission to play in the O
Yeah, I first
as
heard
a
of
spect, what is it? A remarkable youth or something they called him.
yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't really start paying attention to him I didn't really start paying attention until he was on the area Otters
Otters
team.
team.
Then I watched it a lot. Then I watched them a lot because they were on hockey. They were on the NHL network a lot. They had an OHL game on every or a yeah OHL game on every Friday night, and I used to
Like
catch
his
his
last
games.
season there, along with Eichel playing at Boston,
Oh
there was
yeah, yeah, it
a
was a
lot
lot.
of non-NHL hockey being watched
Hmm.
that year.
Yes, there was. Yes, there
Mhm.
was.
So I think you and I both are of the belief that he should be in the Hall of Fame already. He should have, in my opinion, been a shoe-in, not maybe necessarily as like a first ballot guy, but it's a long time. It's
Well,
been
I think the
he's
stat
been eligible
was
for over 13 years
yeah,
now.
I think it was 15 cycles. He's 15 voting cycles. He's been involved in, and he hasn't gotten in yet. So something's amiss. I don't know what. I really don't know what, because he certainly has the numbers to back up you know, a place in the Hall of Fame.
I
So
agree.
hopefully at some point in time he'll get in. I think like we said, it would be an incomplete version of the greats if he's not
Yeah,
in.
it's like you exactly. I was going to add on to that, but I don't think that I can because that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Remember the Mogilny jersey that we had,
Hmm.
the small
Hmm.
one? Was that
Hmm.
whose was that?
Was it yours? Was it either yours or
Oh,
Adriana's?
I think it was Adriana's.
It might have been Adriana's.
Yeah, I was trying to get her to pop on for this,
Whatever.
but she's been busy. So, because I think she has some memories of McGillney even as well.
So, so, so
We're
let-
down to 10 minutes here.
okay. Well, let's put it in perspective. So McGilney was in Buffalo, and he played in Buffalo from what,
88,
88,
88, or I'm sorry, 89
yeah,
until
89 to one.
95, 96. Then he got
Okay.
traded to Vancouver.
So when he got to Buffalo in 89, you
I was
were
6, Adrian's 3.
6 years old. When you remember him playing, right?
I do.
You remember him playing, right?
Yep.
And Adrian's 3, so Adrian probably may not remember him at his beginning of his career in Buffalo, but certainly towards the end there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because those were great years in Buffalo. Those are we
A
had
little lean in playoff victories, but it was
lean in playoff victories, but we had really good.
shortage of excitement.
Um, so I do. Yeah, getting back to what we were talking about last week, I really miss the Sabres of yesteryear because we had some really good teams. We had that team, you know, that you noted just a short time ago when McGinley was traded. We get Pekka in return, and that generation came in and transformed the team.
We got Pekka and Mike Wilson,
Yep,
and
Pekka, Wilson,
a
that's
pick that turned into Jay McKee, who played in the NHL almost immediately.
yeah, yeah,
And then we ended up getting another pick from something related to that turned into Ryan Miller, I think.
okay, okay,
So
yeah,
that pick did net us quite a bit. They're trying to remake um, they're trying to recreate the magic of the that Red Army line, maybe.
yeah, yeah, yep.
It is today being the 25th of May. I think I'd be remiss not to at least discuss a little bit in our last few minutes. Today was the final day of Premier League
That's
football.
right. Yep. I want to
And
mention something else too, but
yes,
let's do the Premier League first.
is it Mogilny related?
No, no, it's not
Okay.
really. No.
I wanted to see, I saw that the table shook out that Villa did not make Champions League football.
Yes, did you see the
I didn't watch their game. I
controversial play?
saw that they were up 1-0 because I was gambling a little bit on those
Okay.
games. Um, and then all of a sudden I'm watching the Arsenal game and I hear them say in a development or Peter Champion maybe broke into the Liverpool game or
Hmm.
something,
Hmm.
basically
Hmm.
saying that Villa suddenly was losing. And I'm like, I just saw they were up 1-0, I thought.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'll have to go back and watch the highlight to that.
Yeah, the goaltender
Andy Martinez.
came out, yes, came out,
Hmm.
was trying to cover the ball, never was able to gain control of the ball. The ball was in the action of the play, the ball was kind of kicked out of his hands just from the normal player running, scores a goal. Um, but they took it off the board. And then a brief short time later, Man U goes down and scores.
Mm.
And the game ends. I believe it ends 1-0, right? So,
Oh, I
and then
thought they were up 1-0. Maybe I looked at it wrong.
they were they spoke with Tim Howard uh, during a halftime or at the end of the game, I guess. I think
Hmm.
it was at the end of the game. They were waiting for the festivities at Liverpool for the awarding of the trophy.
Didn't
But,
watch it.
Tim Howard was saying, that's a goal. The rule is you need to have control of the ball. He never got control of it.
Oh, was it United's player that didn't get control?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, so it
Yes.
was it
Yes.
Onana?
Oh, wait. No, it wasn't Onana. Was he playing
He
today?
hasn't been
No,
playing. He hasn't been
yeah, I
playing
don't know.
Onana regularly.
Yeah, I don't know now. That I don't know. It wasn't Onana. I know that. So,
Interesting. I'll have to go back and take a look at it. Um,
but anyway,
but
yeah, they had a goal. They thought they had a goal. The goal was called back. Man U um, wins the game, and Villa gets screwed, right? They
they
would
have
have
to
made the
go to
top
Europa
five.
League.
Yeah. So
Yep.
yeah, so very
So,
controversial. I
It's
go back and
interest
watch it.
it's interesting. I'll watch the extended highlights. The table is a mess this year because you've
Right.
got Villa and it's in sixth, and Crystal Palace in 12th are going to be in Europa League
Yeah.
because Palace won the FA Cup.
Right. Right.
And then you've got, the top five making Champions League football, but also the team in 17th.
Right. Okay.
One step up from relegation, granted 13 points clear of that,
Right.
but
Right.
wild.
And then you had so just to get so I get it straight now,
Mm.
the top five teams that started the day there are still there, right?
Are still there, I believe,
They all made it.
yeah, I believe that actually there was no movement either.
So
Because Chelsea
that's
did win. They
right.
beat
Chelsea
Nottingham
won.
Forest.
The Man City win.
City won 2-0, I think.
Okay.
They're going to be a problem next year.
Man City.
Again, yeah, they won four of their last five.
Yeah. Yeah. They seem to find their way again.
So, Arsenal's going to have to load up. I
Hmm.
mean, they're in the process of it. Sounds like they're down to one of these two strikers, either Sesko or Gyökeres. Um, both big, fast men who are good in the air. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but we kind of got up and did a little Premier League thing, and then had all those games on. Was watching those, and I am going to hold you to that if I get you a Calafiori jersey.
I'm ready. I told you. I
You're
told you.
ready. You're
I
ready to
told you a text.
jump ship.
I'll probably jump ship and become an Arsenal fan because I watched more Arsenal this year anyway than I did Man U. So,
How are you going to tell Mike that though?
well, Mike's a big boy. He can
You'll have to
understand.
break it to him gently.
He could take it. He could take it that I jump ship. Last night, I just want to add one more thing before we
We do
go.
have better looking gear too, but
Yes,
anyway,
yes, you
go
guys
ahead.
do. Um,
3 minute
last
warning, by the
night,
way.
my wife and I were out for dinner, and we went to a sports bar down here in the Lakeland area, and we went in and we sat down, and I right in front of me on the big screen I was watching the Buffalo Bandits in
Yeah,
Saskatchewan,
we watched the ending. I watched the
and
ending
I
too.
watched part of the last part of the game, and the fourth quarter basically,
Mhm.
and I just want to shout out to the Bandits, three consecutive championships.
Back to back to back.
And I don't think they get enough. They get love in Buffalo, but not anywhere else. I just want to say that's a great accomplishment. I was so happy. It looked like the place was sold out. So
It is sold out.
that was
It's
great.
one of the only places that sells out, and they sell
Yeah,
out a big arena too
yeah,
regularly.
that is a big arena. And it was
Yeah.
very good to see. And I think they deserve
It's
the accolades.
yeah.
So way to go, Bandits.
Yeah, I think a lot of, it's Canada's game too, so they
Yeah.
probably
Oh yeah.
care. But that's a lot of
Yeah.
the Canadian players.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, the game was actually on. It was on TSN.
yeah.
We were picking up the TSN
I got
feed.
up the
So
TSN feed over ESPN Plus.
I don't
That's
know what
how
the
I got it
freaking
too.
ESPN does, but
I don't know.
here we go.
Yep. Well, that's number two in the books.
Yes, it's a
And
wrap.
do we have any thoughts on where we're going to go with the next one for our last, let's say 30 seconds?
I don't want to.
You don't want to step on
I
anything?
don't have a bunch of. I don't want to have create a bunch of dead air. So I don't really have anything. I have a
Not at the
lot
top
of
of line. Not at
directions
the
we can
top of mind.
go. Yeah, look, I have a lot of directions. So there'll be something there.
I think maybe we go away from hockey this
Well,
next.
I think we're going to go away from hockey. This is really the second show we did with hockey, pretty much hockey related. So
Yeah. Not that
we're
we
going to get
won't
away
come
from
back,
hockey.
because obviously we
Right,
will, but the season is going to culminate soonish. So,
right, exactly.
all right. So that's episode two of what are we calling this show again, Dad?
This show is called Echoes
Echoes of
from
the
the
Arena.
Arena.
Echoes from the Arena.
From the
So
arena, yes.
from the
Echoes from
arena.
the arena is the
What's
title.
our working title?
Yes,
Okay.
but I think it's a good title. I
I
think
like it. I
it'll
like it.
stick. It'll
Yeah.
stick.
All right.
All right, Matt.
Signing off
Good job.
and scene.
Okay.